What if you suddenly lost everything and had no one by your side? That was the question Mia Carter kept asking herself as the neon lights of Los Angeles flickered across the hood of her broken-down Prius, parked just outside a hotel she could no longer afford. Just 2 weeks ago, she had a stable job, a promising role in an innovative tech division, and a boyfriend who swore he'd never leave. Now, all she had was a duffel bag, a dead phone, and a one-way ticket to nowhere. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Mia was smart, driven, the kind of woman who burned through obstacles like kindling. She graduated top of her class in mechanical engineering from Purdue, built her name in clean energy, and somehow caught the attention of the one and only Elon Musk. But now, as the streetlights buzzed and the night air grew colder, everything she had worked for seemed to have evaporated in just a few chaotic days. She pulled her hoodie tight, sitting on the curb with her head resting on her knees, eyes blurred with tears and exhaustion. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Her dad used to ask her a similar question: what's your anchor when the storm hits? He used to say that it was always darkest before the dawn, though Mia now wondered if he really believed that, or if it was just something people say to keep from falling apart. It all began unraveling the day the email arrived. Subject line: confidential, Project Polaris, initial review request. Inside was a non-disclosure agreement so airtight she almost couldn't breathe after signing it. This wasn't just a pitch or a new product. It was a classified initiative within Musk's most elite think tank, focused on sustainable orbital infrastructure, yes, as in off-world clean energy generation. Her heart had raced just reading the proposal. It promised a solution that could capture solar energy from space and beam it to Earth. Clean, limitless, renewable. It sounded impossible. It sounded like science fiction. It sounded exactly like the kind of project that changes the world, and the kind Mia had been dreaming about her entire life. But someone didn't want her on that team. A week after she was cleared and flown to the SpaceX campus in Hawthorne, her system access was mysteriously revoked, and the lead engineer, a smug man named Colton Price, claimed she had violated internal protocols. She hadn't. She knew she hadn't. But no one listened. Within hours, she was escorted out of the building. No explanation. No hearing. No justice. She tried calling her boyfriend, Drew, hoping for comfort, only to be met with a cold confession. "Mia, I can't do this anymore. You're always chasing things that don't exist." He didn't understand. Nobody did. Musk had pulled her into a room himself just a month earlier, had looked her in the eyes and said, "You see things other people don't. That's why you're here." Those words echoed now as she sat alone with a city sprawling in front of her, glittering with opportunity but indifferent to her collapse. She had heard rumors before about how cutthroat Musk's internal projects could be, how the stakes were so high that entire careers could vanish over one mistake, one misstep, one perceived weakness. But this didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like sabotage. Mia's mind raced through every interaction with Colton. The way he hovered near her workstation. The questions he asked about her access level. The weird delay when she submitted her findings from the hydrogen fusion capacitor trial. It had to be him. He was threatened. And now she was paying the price. The worst part wasn't being locked out of her dream job. The worst part was not knowing whether the project would move forward without her, and whether the world would ever get to see what they had been building. Her name might never be on it now. Her fingerprints wiped clean. She stood up, rubbing her sore shoulders and taking one last look at the darkened street. She had no place to go, but she refused to give up. Not now. Not after getting so close. She remembered something Musk had said in an interview once: "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." Well, this was important enough. She'd find a way to fight back. She'd find proof. She'd find a way to get her voice heard again, even if that meant crashing the next investor summit or sleeping in her car until she figured out her next move. She took out her journal and scribbled down a few lines, trying to make sense of the fragments in her mind. Who had said what, when the access codes changed, the timeline of Colton's sudden promotion. Something didn't add up. She needed help, but not from anyone she knew. She needed someone on the inside who still believed in her. That's when she remembered Jess Monroe, an old college friend who had taken a job at Tesla's AI division. They hadn't spoken in years, but Jess was sharp, principled, and still owed Mia for covering for her during finals week. Mia opened her last browser tab, hoping the free hotel Wi-Fi still worked. It did. She messaged Jess on LinkedIn with a simple line, "I need to talk. It's about Project Polaris. It's bigger than anything you've ever seen." She stared at the screen, watching the blinking dots as Jess began to reply. Her heart thudded. She wasn't alone. Not entirely. A minute later, the response came in, "You're not crazy. I've seen the plans. They've buried it under a fake satellite initiative. Meet me tomorrow. Venice Beach. 10 a.m. Mia exhaled for the first time in hours. Maybe she wasn't finished after all. Maybe this was just the beginning. The moon was rising now, full and soft, casting silver light across the city. Somewhere out there, hidden behind closed doors and fake projects, was a technology that could alter the course of human history. And she wasn't going to let it slip away, not without a fight. She didn't need a fancy badge or a corner office to be a part of the future. She just needed courage, clarity, and a plan. And Mia Carter had always been a woman with a plan. The train tracks behind the house used to shake the floorboards every night at 2:07 a.m., like clockwork. That's how Mia Carter remembered her childhood, measured in vibrations and the quiet creaks of a worn-out Pittsburgh home that tried its best to hold together even when everything inside was slowly falling apart. Her father, Thomas Carter, was a retired machinist who spent most days in the garage behind the house, covered in grease and surrounded by broken-down lawn mowers, old drill presses, and blueprints for inventions that never quite made it off the page. He believed in progress like some people believe in God, with a stubborn kind of faith that nothing, not layoffs, not bankruptcy, not even cancer, could shake. The future belongs to the people who refuse to stop building, he used to say. Mia had memorized that line before she could even tie her shoes. Her mother, on the other hand, had disappeared from Mia's life before those tracks ever started rattling the house. One morning when Mia was 6, she left for work and never came back. No note, no calls, just silence that stretched on for years. Her absence became a kind of presence in the house. A ghost that lived in the corners, in the missed birthdays, in the way her father stared at the floor when Mia asked questions he didn't want to answer. It wasn't until much later that Mia realized her mother had struggled with addiction. That kind of pain leaves a mark, even if you can't see it. But Thomas never let Mia feel like she was missing anything. He made breakfast every morning, packed her lunch, read every report card, and even learned to braid her hair by practicing on a mop handle. He also taught her how to use a wrench by the time she was 8, which, in Pittsburgh, was basically a rite of passage. When other girls were watching cartoons, Mia was learning how to strip copper wire and rebuild a 2-stroke engine. Her favorite nights were when her dad would pull out his old copy of Popular Mechanics and sketch out new ideas for wind turbines or solar panels, swearing that someday, clean energy would be more than a pipe dream. "You've got the mind for this," he told her once, handing her a soldering iron and watching her steady hands with pride. "You just have to believe it's possible before anyone else does." That belief carried Mia through middle school, where she built her first robotic arm for the science fair and got suspended for rewiring a hallway camera just to see if she could. It pushed her through high school honors classes filled with kids who doubted she belonged, especially when she showed up in oil-stained jeans and didn't care about prom. It got her into Purdue on a full scholarship, though she had to work 2 jobs just to afford food and books. Her dad never saw her graduate. He died during her sophomore year, quietly, at home, surrounded by stacks of parts he never got to finish assembling. She hadn't made it home in time. The guilt stuck with her for months. She buried herself in work, building a senior thesis around autonomous solar tracking systems and refusing to look up long enough to grieve. That was her way: move forward, no matter what. Grief, like everything else, could be engineered into something useful. It was during her senior showcase that she met Professor Langley, a retired NASA engineer turned private consultant who told her, "There are people in the valley who'd kill for a mind like yours." He introduced her to a recruiter at Tesla, who introduced her to someone at SpaceX, who eventually got her in front of a panel for a program so secret, its name was literally redacted. Mia didn't blink. She passed the cognitive exam with the highest score in 3 years and walked out of the interview with a one-way ticket to Hawthorne and a relocation bonus larger than her father's life insurance payout. But she never forgot where she came from. She kept her dad's wrench in her backpack, rubbed smooth from years of use, a reminder that all progress begins with someone getting their hands dirty. Even in her most sophisticated presentations, with executives in $1,000 suits asking about nanofibers and AI, she still thought like the girl in the garage who learned how to problem solve by trial, error, and busted knuckles. That identity made her different. Sometimes it made her threatening. Especially to people like Colton Price. He came from legacy. Yale. Third-generation engineer. All charm and curated messiness, with a bio full of buzzwords and a jawline that made people forget to ask real questions. Mia tried to work with him. She really did. But he never saw her as an equal. From day one, he treated her like a fluke, a charity hire with a sad backstory and a lucky break. And yet, in every design meeting, it was her diagrams they used, her efficiency models they built on, her data that kept showing up in every prototype summary. She didn't want fame. She just wanted credit. And she definitely wanted to be in the room when the world's first orbital solar relay was activated, a moment she had dreamed about since she was 15, standing in a garage with her dad, sketching ideas on the back of a pizza box. Now, sitting in a borrowed hoodie and sweatpants in a cafe off Lincoln Boulevard, she sipped her lukewarm coffee and stared at the beach through the window. Jess was late. Typical. Always 10 minutes behind, even in college, when they used to pull all-nighters and argue about which parts of science fiction were most realistic. But Jess always showed up eventually. That's what mattered. Mia opened her notebook and flipped to the page she had filled the night before, Project Polaris, What I Know. Underneath, a list of bullet points that grew messier with each new addition: radio frequency power transmission, hexagonal satellite arrays, atmospheric lensing algorithms, theoretical breach in the energy regulation code, Colton's unusual promotion date, the missing capacitor logs. She didn't have full access anymore, but her mind was still sharp, and her memory was better than most servers. She could rebuild the framework just from what she remembered. A shadow fell across the table. Mia looked up. Jess was wearing aviators and a worn Stanford sweatshirt, hair pulled back, coffee in one hand, tablet in the other. "You look like hell," Jess said, sliding into the seat across from her. "You always open with compliments." Mia shot back. "You called me in the middle of a product sprint and said the words, Polaris, and, bigger than anything you've ever seen. I figured this wasn't a social call." Mia handed her the notebook. Jess flipped through it silently, her expression unreadable. After a minute, she looked up. "This is a lot. You sure you're not being paranoid?" "I'm sure they're covering something," Mia said. "They didn't just cut me out. They erased me. Every trace. Colton's behind it. I just can't prove how." Jess tapped a few things on her tablet, then frowned. "You're not wrong about the timing. There's a new satellite registration under a fake name in the FCC's public filings, filed the same day you got booted. Same specs as Polaris. You can trace it?" Mia asked. "Not without setting off some alarms. But I know someone who can." Jess leaned in, lowering her voice. You're going to need more than speculation, Mia. You need to show them that what you know isn't just theory. You need to build it. The words hit Mia like electricity. Build it. Not just tell the story. Prove it. That's what her dad would have said. Show them. Make it real. Mia's mind started racing. If I can get my hands on the right components, I can recreate the energy redistribution model. Maybe even simulate the orbital configuration in a closed system. Jess nodded slowly. You've got 3 days. After that, Musk goes public with his next breakthrough. And if your name's not on it by then, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Mia stood up, adrenaline rushing back into her veins. She had 3 days to take back what was hers, to finish what her father started, to show the world the truth before it was buried beneath press releases and PR spin. She was going to build it, no matter what it took. And this time, no one was going to shut her out. The warehouse in Inglewood didn't look like much from the outside. Just a rusted shell wedged between a discount tire shop and a shuttered laundromat, with graffiti tagging half the roll-up door and weeds pushing through the cracks in the sidewalk. But inside, it was a treasure trove of forgotten tech, dusty server racks, drone parts, solar panel fragments, and crates labeled with company names that hadn't existed since the Obama administration. Jess had called in a favor from a friend who ran a parts salvage operation here, someone who didn't ask questions and took payment in cryptocurrency or solar-powered flash drives. You've got 48 hours, Jess had told her. After that, I'm out of favors and you're out of time. Mia had worked with less. She spent the next 6 hours digging through bins and metal shelves, hunting for anything she could use to rebuild the Polaris energy redistribution model. She found a cluster of microinverters that could be retrofitted for pulse beam simulation, a damaged gyroscopic stabilizer from an old CubeSat, and what appeared to be a lithium titanium capacitor from a Tesla prototype that never made it past testing. She stuffed them all into her backpack, wiped sweat from her forehead, and tried not to think about how her life had come to this, hiding in shadows, building a device the world wasn't supposed to know existed. As she soldered wires under a flickering work light, the hum of the city outside faded, replaced by a rhythm she remembered from childhood, the sharp scent of melting flux, the snap of stripped wires, the soft clicks of connections locking into place. Her mind shifted into the zone, where everything else, fear, betrayal, exhaustion, drifted to the background and only the problem in front of her mattered. It was just her and the build. That was where she thrived. But the tension wasn't gone. It sat heavy in her chest, a constant pressure, because time was running out and Colton wasn't going to stop. If he had gone as far as framing her, there was no telling what he'd do if he found out she was still in the game. She needed proof, and she needed protection. She messaged Jess a list of encrypted file IDs she remembered from the Polaris data center. If Jess could find even one of those files in the satellite logs, they'd have a digital trail. But for now, Mia had to focus on the physical. She finished assembling the microinverter stack and booted up her laptop, rerouting the input signals through a custom script she'd written back in her internship days. As the first diagnostic ran, a familiar voice echoed in her memory. Her father, warning her not to trust people who smile too much without saying anything real. She should have known. Colton never smiled with his eyes. In the early days at SpaceX, he had been charming, even helpful, answering her questions, inviting her to after-hours brainstorming sessions, dropping compliments about her work that always felt slightly off. At first, she thought he was just awkward. Then she realized he was testing her. Every interaction was a probe, a way to figure out how much she knew, how fast she moved, what she could be used for. And once he had what he wanted, her capacitor design, her orbital sync equations, he made sure she was no longer necessary. She remembered the way he'd looked at her in the final meeting before she was locked out. Calm. Cold. Almost triumphant. Like he'd already won. Well, he hadn't. Not yet. Mia finished wiring the capacitor into the simulation circuit and powered it on. The screen glowed blue, then white, then green. Stable. She adjusted the input levels and initiated the test run. If the beam's signal held for 10 seconds, she'd have proof that the system could transfer power across orbital ranges without direct ground relay. A low hum filled the air. She held her breath. 7 seconds, 9, 10. The signal held. The capacitor didn't explode. The data compiled. She had it. The blueprint worked. She uploaded the results to an encrypted drive and locked it behind a double authentication protocol she designed in college. No one was erasing her work this time. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. Her phone buzzed. A restricted number. Mia hesitated, then answered. "You're making a mistake," said Colton's voice on the other end. Calm. Cold. Triumphant. "I don't know what you think you're proving, but you're going to burn every bridge you've got left." Her stomach turned. "Funny," she said, voice steady. "I didn't realize sabotage and intellectual theft were standard practice now." "You don't understand how this works," he said. "You were a wild card. Brilliant, sure, but unpredictable. We couldn't afford that." "We?" she asked. "You mean you." Silence. "Then, walk away, Mia. You're good, but you're not untouchable." "And this? This is bigger than you know." "Then let's show everyone just how big it really is," she said, and hung up. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. From rage. He was watching her. Somehow, he knew what she was doing, maybe even where she was. She shut down the system and packed everything in less than 5 minutes, eyes darting to the warehouse door with every movement. If he sent someone, she wasn't going to stick around and find out who. She took a rideshare 3 miles in the wrong direction just to throw off any tracking, then ducked into a co-working space she used to frequent during her Tesla days. It was mostly empty now, just a few freelancers nursing overpriced lattes and trying to sell NFT art. Perfect. She set up in the back, behind a fake plant and a busted whiteboard. Jess messaged her. They'd found one of the file IDs, buried under a dummy shell inside a communications relay test folder. Jess was working on extracting it without triggering a flag. "Whatever you built," she typed, "they're trying hard to bury it." Mia didn't reply. She just stared at the screen. If this file had the energy signatures from the orbital beam tests, and they could tie that data back to her design schematics, it would prove beyond a doubt that she was the rightful co-architect of Polaris. But more than that, it would prove the technology worked, and that someone had tried to keep the credit for themselves. She was about to message back when the co-working space lights flickered. A power glitch. Normal in old buildings. Except this one had a backup generator. And the flicker had lasted too long. She froze. Was it paranoia, or something more? She packed up again, faster this time, and headed to the stairwell instead of the front entrance. Better to stay unpredictable. Better to stay moving. She had what she needed, the build, the data, the timing. Now she just had to get it in front of the right eyes. And there was only one person whose eyes mattered now. Elon Musk. She wasn't sure if he still remembered her face. Probably not. But he'd remember the schematics. And she was going to show him that the woman he called a visionary hadn't disappeared, she'd just gone underground. She messaged Jess again. "Get me 10 minutes at the summit." Jess replied, "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. This isn't just a comeback. It's a reckoning." And as Mia stepped out into the Los Angeles night, the air electric with possibility and danger, she knew she was no longer just fighting for her name or her future. She was fighting for truth. For integrity. For every girl in a garage who dared to dream big. The conflict had sparked. And the fire was just beginning. The entrance to the summit wasn't a grand convention center or a Silicon Valley mansion, it was a discreet elevator inside an unmarked building in downtown Los Angeles, hidden behind a boutique gelato shop that doubled as a front for high-level tech meetups. Jess had warned her it would be exclusive, invitation only, full of billionaires, ex-CIA contractors, and people who owned private satellites and neural interface patents. The kind of place where fortunes were made in whispers and reputations were ruined in silence. Mia stood at the door wearing a borrowed black blazer and jeans that didn't quite match the dress code, her hair tied back and her fake ID badge clipped over a lanyard from an old Tesla event. Her heart beat like a war drum, but her expression was calm, focused, detached. She couldn't afford to hesitate. The security guard scanned her badge, looked her over, then gave a barely perceptible nod. The elevator doors slid open. No music. No buttons. Just a scan panel and a single soft beep as the floor descended, deeper than any regular building should have allowed. Jess's final message echoed in her mind, "You'll have 10 minutes. 15 if you're lucky. Don't blink." When the doors opened, Mia stepped into a subterranean space bathed in soft blue light. Holographic displays floated in the air like ghosts, showcasing prototypes of orbital platforms, quantum batteries, and AI-guided propulsion systems. Engineers and investors mingled in hushed conversations, sipping molecular cocktails and trading access keys like currency. It was a cathedral of innovation, and at its center stood a small glass stage where Elon Musk himself was preparing to speak. Mia didn't hesitate. She walked past the crowd, weaving between smart glasses executives and climate tech founders, until she reached the far side of the room where a line of panelists waited to pitch their work. Jess had slipped her onto the backup list under a pseudonym, Amelia Thomas, a nod to both Mia's full name and her father's. It was a long shot, but Musk often entertained unvetted pitches when they sounded disruptive enough. She handed her drive to a tech assistant, who barely looked up before plugging it into the central console. A line of code scrolled across the display. Mia watched every byte. Then she heard her name. Not Amelia. Mia. Spoken clearly. Directly. Elon Musk was looking right at her. "Let's hear from Mia Carter," he said, voice casual but curious. "I remember that name." The room fell quiet. Whispers buzzed along the walls. Mia stepped onto the stage, drive in hand, heart racing. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at him. "What if I told you," she began, "that clean energy doesn't have to wait? That we don't have to drill, mine, or burn to power our future? That we can beam energy from orbit to any point on Earth without environmental impact or geopolitical leverage? And what if I told you the technology already exists, right here, right now? And it's been buried by people who are afraid of losing control." Silence. Then a few murmurs. Musk tilted his head, intrigued. "Go on." She plugged in the drive. A 3D projection of the Polaris framework floated into view, a solar array lattice locked in geosynchronous orbit, collecting solar radiation 24 hours a day and transmitting it to Earth via directed beam through a low-frequency resonance relay. The room lit up with graphs, simulations, efficiency curves. "The prototype works," Mia said. "I've rebuilt it using salvaged parts. I ran the signal test. No heat loss. No atmospheric interference. Just clean, raw power delivered wirelessly to a ground receiver the size of a shipping container. Scalable, reliable, and impossible to hack or weaponize due to frequency dispersion. This isn't theory. It's physics. It's real." Musk watched in silence, lips pressed together. He knew. She could see it in his eyes. He recognized the framework. He had seen it before. Probably in Colton's presentation. But now he was seeing it from the original source. The person who had designed it. She pressed on. "My designs were taken. My access was revoked. Someone inside the Polaris program tried to erase my involvement. But the system architecture, the harmonics, the capacitor arrays, the orbital sync modeling, all of it was my work. And I can prove it. Every line of code, every test result, every algorithm. It's all time-stamped and signed. You said once that when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds aren't in your favor. Well, I'm here because this is important. And I'm not walking away until the world hears the truth. A long pause followed. Then Musk turned to his assistant. Check the hash logs on those designs, he said. See who signed them first. The assistant nodded and began typing furiously. The room held its breath. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then the assistant looked up. The original metadata belongs to Mia Carter, he said. Filed 7 weeks before the current submission by Colton Price. Gasps. Then a sudden shift in the room's energy, like a collective awakening. People murmured, eyes darting to one another, calculating reputations, alliances, implications. Musk raised an eyebrow. Colton's going to have a hard week, he muttered, almost to himself. Then he looked back at Mia. You're good, he said. Really good. Where've you been hiding? I wasn't hiding, she said. I was locked out. He nodded slowly. Then smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached his eyes. How would you like to lead a demo in Nevada? He asked. We've got a dry lake bed and a Department of Energy observer waiting for something to believe in. Mia felt the adrenaline surge through her chest. She had done it. She had broken through. Not with politics or connections or ego. With the truth. She stepped off the stage as the applause began to swell, quiet at first, then louder, more certain. Engineers she didn't know nodded at her. Investors took notes. And somewhere in the back, someone muttered, she just changed the game. But the victory was short-lived. As Mia exited the presentation area, her phone buzzed with a text from Jess. Get out of there. Now. I've just been locked out of my terminal. Colton knows. He's not going down without a fight. Mia didn't wait. She slipped through a service corridor and took the stairs 3 flights up to an emergency exit, bursting out into a parking garage bathed in midday heat. She ducked behind a column, checking her surroundings. No one followed. Yet. Her mind raced. If Colton still had allies inside, he could try to spin the story, claim joint authorship, accuse her of espionage. She needed to stay ahead. The Nevada demo was in 36 hours. That was all the time she had to get there, assemble the prototype, and prove once and for all that the tech worked not just in simulation, but in the real world. She called Jess. Voicemail. She texted, meet me at the Santa Monica hangar. We'll fly from there. The hangar belonged to an old contact of Jess's, ex-Air Force, now running a side business moving sensitive tech off-grid. Cash only. No manifests. Perfect for a last-minute trip into the unknown. She hailed a rideshare, kept her head down, and tried not to think about the fact that she was officially on someone's target list. The sun was starting to dip as the car pulled up to the hangar. Jess was already there, pacing, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. You lit a fire in there, she said as Mia stepped out. Half of SpaceX is buzzing. The other half is panicking. You made an enemy. Good, Mia replied. He started it. I'm finishing it. You sure you're ready for this? Jess asked. This isn't just a demo. This is your entire future. Mia looked at the plane. Then back at her friend. I've been ready my whole life. They boarded the aircraft. The engine roared to life. As Los Angeles shrank behind them, the desert opened up in front. A vast, golden canvas waiting for what came next. Mia Carter stared out the window, her fingers curled around a metal wrench her father had once given her. The future wasn't coming. She was bringing it with her. The Nevada sky stretched endlessly overhead, painted in gradients of fire and rust as the sun edged downward, casting long shadows across the dry lakebed. The hangar was located on the edge of a decommissioned airstrip, a remnant from the Cold War, with cracked tarmac and a control tower that looked like it hadn't seen traffic in 20 years. It was the perfect place to conduct an unregistered demonstration of a technology no government had fully acknowledged yet. Mia and Jess arrived just past sunset, met by a two-person ground crew who didn't ask questions. The plane taxied straight into the open bay of the hangar, its cargo hold loaded with carefully packed equipment, solar lenses, capacitor arrays, inverter modules, and the heartbeat of the Polaris system. The custom-fabricated relay node Mia had built by hand just days earlier. She climbed out of the plane and into the cooling desert air, feeling both exhaustion and electricity in her bones. Jess handed her a bottle of water and a protein bar, neither of which Mia could bring herself to eat. Her stomach was tied in knots, but her hands were steady. She hadn't felt this clear since her first test run back at Purdue, when her solar tracker prototype had rotated perfectly with the sun for 9 straight hours. The Department of Energy representative was scheduled to arrive within the hour. Musk's team had already sent confirmation. He would be watching the demo remotely via secure satellite feed. It was all happening. But something still gnawed at her, just beneath the triumph. A warning. A shadow. Jess noticed it too. "You okay?" she asked, crouching beside Mia as she unboxed the primary relay unit. "Yeah," Mia said, not looking up. "No. I don't know. Something feels off." "Colton?" Jess asked. "Maybe," Mia said. "Or maybe it's just that it's finally real. All of it. The chance. The risk. The fact that we might actually change the world, or fall flat on our faces trying." Jess nodded and sat back on her heels. "Look, I've watched you work under pressure. I've seen you make broken things breathe again. Whatever happens out there tonight, you've already won back your name. You did what nobody else would. You told the truth." Mia looked over at her. "Telling the truth's the easy part. Making people believe it. That's the war." The two women got back to work in silence, focused and fast. They mounted the solar arrays on a portable framework using adjustable rig arms, aligned the capacitor banks in a staggered diamond to balance charge, and programmed the beam transmitter to fire on a modulated frequency designed to avoid disrupting nearby communications. It wasn't perfect. It was a Frankenstein machine made from surplus parts and desperation, but it was elegant. Simple. Effective. Mia powered up the interface module and watched the diagnostic lights flash green, one after another. Everything was ready. 30 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up along the airstrip. The Department of Energy official stepped out, an older woman with silver hair, aviator sunglasses, and the cool demeanor of someone who'd seen every breakthrough tech claim in the book and had been disappointed by most of them. She introduced herself only as Dr. Arlene Grant. "Let's see what you've got," she said. Mia walked her through the build with precision, explaining the orbital sinking, the power collection methodology, and the way the beam was encoded for safe transfer without atmospheric interference. Dr. Grant listened without interrupting, arms folded, occasionally glancing at the readings on her portable analyzer. "We've seen a lot of theoretical proposals like this," she said finally. "But nothing operational." "This isn't theory," Mia said, pointing to the array. "This is execution." "And what happens if this works?" Dr. Grant asked. "You think the world's going to thank you for threatening oil cartels, nuclear lobbyists, and every utility monopoly from here to Singapore?" "I'm not trying to destroy anyone," Mia said. "I'm trying to give people options. We don't have to keep bleeding the planet to stay powered." Dr. Grant smiled faintly. "Good answer. Let's light it up." Mia took a deep breath, then turned to the control module. She checked the uplink coordinates, verified the orbital sync ping, and initiated the beam pulse. A low hum filled the air as the capacitors charged, followed by a flash of blue-white light as the relay fired. A second later, a target receiver 300 meters away lit up, drawing power from thin air. The receiver's internal battery jumped from 0 to 63% in under 8 seconds. Jess gasped. Dr. Grant's eyebrows rose. "Do it again," she said. Mia reset the sequence and fired again. Same result. This time, the receiver charged to 91%. "You've got stable transmission," Dr. Grant said, staring at her analyzer. "No loss. No deviation. This is," she didn't finish the sentence. She just stared at the equipment like it had no right to exist. Mia smiled, but it didn't last. A low rumble filled the air. Not from the equipment, but from the sky. Jess looked up. "You hear that?" "Yeah," Mia said, squinting toward the western horizon. A dust cloud was rising in the distance, fast and low. Within seconds, headlights cut through the haze. 3 vehicles, maybe 4. Not government. Not press. Mia's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, should have stayed in the shadows. "He found us," she whispered. "Jess, we've got to move. Now." "They're coming in hot," Jess said. "We can't outdrive them." Mia scanned the field, heart pounding. "Can we wipe the system? Pull the data?" "Not in time," Jess replied. "We either hide it or destroy it." "No," Mia said. "We finish it." She ran back to the console and locked in the final transmission sequence, an auto-ping loop that would send the data in bursts to a secure cloud node she'd set up years ago, meant for emergency storage during thesis work. It wasn't fast, but it would be enough. She turned to Dr. Grant. "You need to go. Now. If they find you here, I'm not going anywhere," Dr. Grant said, voice like steel. "I've waited a long time to see something that matters. I'm not letting them take this." Mia stared at her, stunned. Then nodded. "Then help me hold them off." The first vehicle screeched to a stop outside the hangar. Men in black tactical gear stepped out, private security, not government. Not legal. Colton's people. One of them raised a megaphone. "Step away from the equipment. This is a secured zone." "Since when?" Jess muttered. "We didn't file any permits," Mia said. "They're banking on fear. So let's give them something to be afraid of," Jess said. Mia activated the final failsafe, a one-shot capacitor burn that would fry the equipment after the transmission ended, making reverse engineering impossible. A countdown appeared, 180 seconds. "We've got 3 minutes," Mia shouted. "After that, the whole system goes offline, permanently." The men advanced. Dr. Grant stood her ground. "You're trespassing on federal land," she called. "Any interference with this demonstration constitutes a felony." One of the men hesitated. Another grabbed his shoulder. They whispered. Then, like a spell breaking, they backed off. Not far. But enough. Mia turned back to the screen. 60% uploaded. 90 seconds left. Jess clutched her arm. "We're gonna make it." "We already did," Mia said. The data hit 100% just as the final timer reached 0. The screen flashed white, then dark. The equipment crackled and died, fried from within. Irreparable. The knowledge was no longer in the machine. It was free. Distributed. Out of reach. The men stormed the hangar. Too late. Mia stepped back, breathing hard. The work was done. The truth was out. And Colton Price had just lost everything. Colton Price's face appeared on every tech news headline within 24 hours. At first, the coverage was sanitized, allegations of design dispute emerge in Polaris Energy Program. But by the second news cycle, the gloves were off. Screens flashed with side-by-side comparisons of Mia's original schematics and the manipulated files Colton had submitted under his name. The timestamps, code fingerprints, and relay algorithms matched Mia's work exactly. The story went viral, igniting debates across forums, investor calls, and late-night news desks. Who was the real architect behind the future of clean energy? And how deep did the cover-up go? Mia sat in a diner outside Reno, staring at her phone while the waitress refilled her coffee. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, but her mind refused to shut down. Jess scrolled through news feeds across 3 devices at once, occasionally stopping to read quotes aloud. "Listen to this," she said, tapping her tablet. "Colton Price, once hailed as the next energy visionary, is now under formal investigation for intellectual fraud, conspiracy to suppress breakthrough technology, and obstruction of federal inquiry." Mia didn't react. She just kept watching the looping video clip of the beam relay demonstration, her demonstration, now shared by every major media outlet. "That's your legacy," Jess said, nudging her gently. "That's what you built." "No," Mia murmured. "That's what we started. But this isn't the finish line." She looked out the diner window toward the desert highway. The storm wasn't over. It was just shifting. Her phone buzzed with a secure message from an encrypted server, Musk's direct reply. "Brilliant work. You're not alone in this. Call me when you're ready." Mia exhaled slowly. That line hit harder than it should have. "You're not alone." She hadn't realized just how long she'd been acting like she was. Jess leaned forward. "You gonna take him up on that?" "Eventually," Mia said. "But not yet." "Why not?" "Because there's still cleanup," she said. "Colton's not going to jail quietly. And someone else helped him pull this off. He's never been smart enough to fake an entire systems report by himself." Jess frowned. "You think there's a bigger player?" "There always is." Mia opened her laptop and pulled up the full packet Jess had extracted before she was locked out: network logs, security clearances, email chains scrubbed from Polaris servers. She zoomed in on one name that had bothered her for weeks: Dana Kroll, listed as a contract systems consultant during the period her files were stolen. Kroll didn't appear in any official Tesla or SpaceX records. But their encrypted ID had admin privileges, which meant they were trusted. Too trusted. Jess saw the screen and stiffened. That name again. "You think they're the ghost in the system?" "I think they're the architect of the cover-up. Colton's too arrogant to hide his tracks that well." Mia cross-referenced Kroll's access timestamps with the periods her permissions were revoked. They lined up perfectly. Whoever Dana Kroll was, they'd slipped in right as Mia was being pushed out, used her work, redirected it, and gave Colton the playbook to make it look like his own. But Kroll wasn't in hiding. A reverse trace on the IP logs Jess had managed to reroute through a private DNS tunnel showed an active signal pinging out of Zurich. Jess blinked. "Switzerland. Offshore think tank, probably," Mia said. "Or shell company. Either way, they're active. And they still have pieces of my research. So we go after them?" Mia hesitated. "No. Not yet. We shine a light on them first. Make it impossible for them to hide." "How?" "We leak the logs." Jess blinked. "To who?" "To everyone." Within hours, Mia composed a release document formatted like an investigative exposé. Complete with annotated access logs, comparisons of data edits, and a timeline that showed exactly how and when her designs were misappropriated. She wrote it under a pseudonym and passed it through a whistleblower platform that syndicated across dozens of independent media channels. By the end of the day, #KrollFiles was trending. The response was instant and explosive. Tech journalists dissected every line of code. Cybersecurity experts confirmed the digital forensics. Energy think tanks began openly questioning who had been funding Polaris in the shadows. Even more damning, anonymous former employees began sharing their own stories, of data disappearing, of sudden firings, of NDAs being used as threats. The dam had broken. But the backlash came just as fast. Mia's name was dragged through smear articles funded by obscure shell media groups, hit pieces claiming she fabricated her evidence, doctored her files, or was a disgruntled former employee with an agenda. Some even suggested she had stolen the tech from Colton and was now flipping the story. Jess swore and slammed her laptop shut. They're playing dirty. Let them, Mia said quietly. Truth wins long term. But we still need something stronger. Something public. Like what? A live test, Mia said. On camera. Not a simulation, not a lab demo. A real-world deployment. Jess stared at her. You mean, beam energy into a live city grid? Exactly. A small one. Controlled. But visible. Undeniable. Jess looked out the window, then back at her. You know how crazy that sounds, right? We're past crazy, Mia said. We're in revolution territory now. By the end of the week, Musk's team had secured permission to use a test site in Texas, an off-grid solar facility near Austin that was under development for Starlink operations. They would supply the infrastructure, Mia would supply the beam. The demo would be broadcast live. Mia and Jess arrived with equipment packed into modular crates, their every move tracked by dozens of volunteer engineers, media outlets, and watchdog observers. There was no room for error. If the transmission failed, her credibility would evaporate overnight. But if it worked, it would rewrite the energy landscape. Mia stood at the heart of the relay array just before sunset, checking every connection, every signal amplifier, every capacitor fuse. She wasn't nervous. She was focused. Present. Alive. As the countdown began, she spoke into the camera broadcasting live to over 3 million viewers worldwide. This isn't about me, she said. It's about all of us. About reclaiming power, literally and figuratively. We don't have to keep choosing between profit and planet. Between survival and progress. We can choose better. Right here. Right now. She nodded to the operator. Begin. The transmission sequence activated. The low hum filled the air. The beam pulsed. And across the valley, the off-grid test village lit up, homes, street lamps, displays, all drawing power from the beam in real time. No cables. No generators. Just wireless, clean power. The crowd erupted. So did the internet. Within an hour, every major network was running the story. Engineer Mia Carter powers test city with wireless energy beam, live. Elon Musk tweeted simply, the future just arrived. Thank you, Mia. Mia stood in the middle of the field, blinking against the glare of the lights, the sound of cheers around her blurring into something surreal. She had done it. Against the odds. Against betrayal. Against silence. She had pulled truth into the light. But as the celebration swirled around her, one message buzzed quietly on her phone. A private signal, anonymous sender. Just one line. Zurich knows. They're watching. Mia stared at it, then slowly slipped the phone back into her pocket. The game had changed. But it wasn't over. Zurich wasn't just a dot on a map anymore, it was a presence. A whisper behind every screen Mia touched, a shadow behind every secure login she entered. After the live test, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Someone out there wasn't just watching. They were probing. Testing for vulnerabilities. Trying to slip in through the cracks. Her phone would flicker for a split second and go dark. Files she knew she'd encrypted would show signs of passive decryption attempts, subtle enough to go unnoticed unless you were looking for them. She was looking. Jess noticed it too. "They're doing recon," she said, peering over her laptop from the safe house they'd rented just outside Boulder. "Whoever's running the Zurich op isn't trying to erase you. They're mapping your reach. Seeing how deep this thing goes." "So we map them first," Mia said. "Trace the traces." "That's not easy," Jess warned. "They're routing through shell networks and blockchain-based jump servers. It's the most paranoid infrastructure I've ever seen. Clean, professional, fast. Probably ex-military or black-budget cyber intelligence. So we give them something they can't resist," Mia said, a plan already forming. "We bait the trap." Jess raised an eyebrow. "How?" "We build a ghost network," Mia replied. "A fake relay map. Looks like a secret Polaris expansion schematic, but it's actually a honeypot. Every access attempt will log their IP fragments, trigger trace pings, and start reverse triangulation. We let them think they're getting ahead of us." Jess leaned back, clearly impressed. "You're not just an engineer. You're dangerous. Only when I have to be." The next 72 hours were a blur of coding, encrypting, fabricating digital breadcrumbs that looked so real even Mia had to remind herself it was fiction. The fake schematic outlined a planned expansion of the wireless power relay system across key global nodes: South Africa, Chile, Southeast Asia, the Arctic Circle. It was packed with pseudo-technical jargon and trace elements of real code, just enough to pass a surface credibility test. Then, they buried the file inside a private research database seeded with just enough leaks to attract Zurich's attention. Sure enough, 3 days later, the first ping hit. Then a second. Then 4 more. They were in. Mia watched the screen as the decoy database lit up with activity, every node drawing out tiny pings like sonar returning echoes from the deep. Jess worked in tandem, tracing each fragment. The Zurich network was sophisticated, each request came from a different spoofed node across continents, but small anomalies gave them away. Timing gaps. Minuscule lags in packet delivery. Like a ghost trying to mimic life. "I've got something," Jess said. 2 IP chains are repeating on a 6-hour cycle. They're bouncing through different countries, but the final stage is always the same city, Geneva. Mia leaned in. "That's close to Zurich. Closer than coincidence." Jess ran a final sweep, triangulating time stamps and latency. Bingo. One of their hops hit a colocation facility registered under an alias, Viridian Global Systems. Mia's heart dropped. Viridian was a name she hadn't heard in years, not since her early days in Polaris, when it was mentioned in hushed tones around secured project meetings. A think tank? A contractor? No one ever gave her a straight answer. But the name had stuck. Viridian had always meant one thing: off books. "We go public again," Mia said. "Let the world know who's really behind the sabotage." Jess hesitated. That might push them to hit harder. This isn't just about reputation anymore. We're messing with people who operate without borders or rules. "I'm not afraid of them," Mia said. "They tried to erase me. They stole my work. They threatened to bury clean energy just to keep their stranglehold on the old system. If we back off now, it was all for nothing." Jess nodded. "Then let's do it right. Full data drop. Every trace we've got." Within hours, the second leak hit. #Viridian files flooded the internet. This time, the public response wasn't just explosive, it was volcanic. Reddit threads surged with amateur sleuths digging into Viridian's shell companies. Anonymous whistleblowers surfaced, revealing former Black Ops contracts and energy tech suppression going back nearly a decade. News anchors spoke the name Viridian like it was a ghost story. Conspiracy podcasts declared war. But amid the chaos, a new signal came through, this time directly to Mia. No threats. No static. Just a message. "You want answers. Meet us. Zurich. One night only. Attached was a time, a location, and a signature that sent a chill down Mia's spine. Dana Kroll. Jess stared at the message. It's a trap. Probably, Mia said. But if they're willing to meet, they're worried. That means leverage. You're not going alone. I wasn't planning to. The next night, under cover of anonymity and encrypted VPN routing, Mia and Jess boarded a private charter to Geneva. Musk's team had arranged discreet transport and clearance, no names, no flight manifests, just two women in hoodies and sunglasses stepping into the heart of the ghost network. The meeting point was a rooftop lounge atop an old banking tower in Zurich, now converted into a private club for tech elites. It was the kind of place where secrets were traded like currency and non-disclosure agreements were implied by the air itself. Dana Kroll was already there, sipping something clear from a crystal glass, looking far younger than Mia expected, maybe mid-30s, sharp suit, dark eyes that had seen far too much. Mia Carter, Kroll said with a smile. The inconvenient truth. Let's skip the flattery, Mia replied, sitting across from them. You stole my work. You helped Colton fake an entire research breakthrough. And now you're scared because the truth is winning. Kroll raised an eyebrow. We didn't steal anything. We repurposed it. Directed it. You buried it, Jess snapped. You tried to kill it before it could breathe. Because the world wasn't ready, Kroll said calmly. You don't understand what you've built. Wireless energy transmission on a global scale doesn't just disrupt utility companies, it collapses power grids, crashes national economies, obliterates entire industries overnight. Do you know what happens when oil becomes irrelevant? When coal plants shut down in countries that depend on them for 60% of their GDP? You're not afraid of collapse, Mia said. You're afraid of losing control. Kroll didn't deny it. Control is what keeps the world from tearing itself apart. You've exposed a Pandora's box. Now the best we can do is guide it toward manageable chaos. So that's why you're here? Mia asked. To negotiate terms on how much of the future you get to manage. No, Kroll said. We're here to offer you a choice. They slid a folder across the table. Inside was a classified project charter, co-branded by Viridian and a multinational energy coalition. It outlined a plan to buy out the Polaris patents, rebrand the tech under a neutral global energy initiative, and slowly phase it in over 10 years. You get paid, Kroll said. The world transitions without collapse. No more sabotage. No more threats. You walk away as the face of the revolution, and we keep the wheels from flying off. Mia stared at the pages. The offer was elegant. Reasonable. Safe. But it wasn't right. You want to turn a revolution into a product, she said. Package it, license it, slow walk it into bureaucratic oblivion. Better that than war, Kroll said. You've made enemies you don't even know exist. Then let them come, Mia said, pushing the folder back. I'm not here to play nice. I'm here to change the rules. Then this is the last offer you'll ever get, Kroll said, eyes narrowing. You may not get another chance. I'm not looking for permission, Mia replied, rising from her chair. I'm building something bigger than fear. Jess followed. They left the rooftop without another word, stepping back into the Swiss night, adrenaline pumping like fire in their veins. As they walked down the street, Mia looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, her relay system was quietly orbiting the planet, carrying the potential to change everything. She wasn't just fighting for credit anymore. She was fighting for the world that came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Back in the States, the world had already begun to split down invisible lines. News cycles flared, then folded, then reappeared in new forms. Half of the world hailed Mia Carter as a revolutionary, the other half whispered the same old questions: was she for real? Was this safe? Was this legal? But underneath the headlines, beneath the public's surface obsession with her story, something quieter began to move. The kind of war that didn't happen on battlefields or boardrooms, but in code. In silence. In flickers of data between towers. It started with a simple anomaly. One of the backup relays, Relay Node 4, stationed in a polar low orbit to maintain line of sight with the test site in Texas, dropped offline. Mia noticed it first. Not because it failed, but because it didn't. It simply vanished from the data stream, no alert, no shutdown log, no thermal trail. 1 minute it was there. The next, it was digital mist. Jess leaned over her shoulder in the Austin lab. Could be solar interference. Mia shook her head. The beacon is still pinging the central server. The orbital transponder still reflects. It's not dead. It's been spoofed. You mean someone's running a copy of your node? A ghost node. Masking its presence while intercepting all its data. Whoever they are, they just hijacked my eyes in the sky. Jess stiffened. Viridian. Or worse, Mia said. Someone new. Over the next few hours, 3 more nodes flickered with anomalies, packet loss, sync delays, duplicate IDs. The system was under siege. Not with brute force, but with mimicry. Mia pulled the kill switch on the compromised stream, isolating it from the main system. But the damage was done. The network had been breached. Not taken over, worse. It had been mirrored. We're looking at something systemic, she said. Not sabotage. Observation. They're mapping how it works, in real time. So they can recreate it, Jess said quietly. And they won't have to ask for permission. Or credit. Mia didn't speak. She just stared at the digital constellation of her relay map, blinking in and out like a heart monitor slowly being hijacked. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about ownership of the future. And someone had just declared silent war to claim it. Days passed with the speed of fire. A counteroffensive began, but not with missiles. With data. Mia, Jess, and a group of open-source developers from around the globe launched what they called Project Signalstorm, a collaborative firewall built entirely on decentralized peer review protocols. No government. No central server. Every node validated by the next. It was brilliant. It was fragile. And it was working. For now. But the ghost network didn't stop. It evolved. The hackers, whoever they were, began targeting Mia's communications. Her emails became erratic. Flight bookings were suddenly cancelled. A public records search listed her as deceased for 24 hours before being corrected. This isn't just a smear, Jess said. They're trying to make you disappear. Let them try, Mia said. But she felt it, the shift. The battle was no longer about whether the technology worked. It was about who would be allowed to use it. And who would be erased for getting too close. Then the message came. A direct, personal one. Old school. Ink on paper. Delivered to a P.O. box she hadn't used in years. No return address. Just a black envelope with her name. Inside, a single sentence typed on a mechanical typewriter: you built it. But we decide how it ends. No signature. No logo. But Mia knew the threat wasn't empty. They had reached her through the one channel she couldn't firewall: fear. Jess paced behind her. We need to go dark. Pull the servers. Disconnect. Lay low until, no, Mia said. That's exactly what they want. Silence. Disappearance. Doubt. She held the note in her hands and stared at it like it was a blueprint. So we speak louder. Within 48 hours, Mia scheduled a live-streamed panel with global energy experts, climate scientists, and developers from the Signal Storm team. The stream went live to 10 million viewers. She opened with no slides. No pitch. Just truth. I was warned not to speak. That's exactly why I will. There are forces, government, corporate, and worse, that believe this technology belongs to them. That you're too weak, too afraid, or too dependent to wield it. They want a future where they decide what power is. Who has it? And who disappears when they speak too loudly. But that future isn't inevitable. It's a choice. This isn't about wireless energy anymore. It's about freedom. Ownership. Control. We have a chance to reclaim it. Together. It wasn't just a speech. It was a rallying cry. The chat exploded. Global voices poured in, offering support, protection, distribution help. Within a day, 5 more independent nodes joined the decentralized network. Then 10. Then 42. From rural India to northern Norway, Mia's blueprint was being replicated, distributed, not under one name, but 1,000. Anonymous. Collective. Resilient. The whisper war had become a storm. But storms attract lightning. On the 7th day after the broadcast, the blackout hit. Austin. Midnight. First the lights. Then the servers. Then the backup generators. Gone. A precision EMP strike, too focused to be natural. Jess jumped from her seat. That wasn't the grid. That was targeted. Mia grabbed her emergency sat-link device and booted the cold backup of the core system. The main network was offline, but not lost. She'd prepared for this. Buried fragments in encrypted chips around the globe. We're live, she said. On analog. We've got one chance to hit back. Jess stared. With what? The thing they didn't expect, Mia said. Truth. And reach. She triggered a dormant command line, activating a bypass protocol that routed through Signalstorm's distributed volunteers. Within 10 minutes, the network was back, not in full, but strong enough to pulse. And the pulse carried something new. A file. An archive. Proof. The real Polaris logs. Schematics. Internal messages. Viridian's buyout offers. Colton's doctored claims. Names. Dates. Everything. Mia sent it out not as a dump, but as a beacon, one that carried a message every system would read first. This knowledge is not owned. It is shared. It is yours. And just like that, the power shifted. Not by force. But by clarity. Within 24 hours, governments responded. Not with arrests. But with requests. Nations began asking for guidance. Open access. Licensing help. Collaboration. The whisper war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Mia stood at the edge of a cliff outside Austin, watching the horizon light up as small relay beacons pulsed in synchronicity from mountaintops and desert valleys. A network. A heartbeat. A future no longer bound by cables or corporations. Jess stepped beside her. We might have just changed everything. Mia nodded slowly. We didn't win, she said. But we made it impossible for them to lie about who did. The stars shimmered above them, silent witnesses to a world in the middle of rewriting its destiny, not with bullets or borders, but with courage. With light. The day after the blackout, the world didn't just wake up, it braced itself. Not for war in the traditional sense, but for the reckoning that comes after someone finally calls out the system and lives to tell about it. Mia Carter had done more than survive the storm. She had turned its energy into fuel. The leak from the Signal Storm network spread faster than even she had predicted. Within 48 hours, multiple governments held emergency sessions. International panels were convened. The United Nations Energy Transition Council, an organization that had barely made headlines in years, was suddenly the front page of every major publication. But truth, Mia realized, had a cost. And it was coming fast. The morning after the global release, an incident report landed on her secure server. A small utility site in Myanmar, one of the first to implement a signalstorm-inspired wireless relay independently, had been attacked. No lives lost, no major infrastructure damage. But the message was clear: someone was willing to go offline to keep others from going online. Jess stared at the report in silence. They're hitting the weakest nodes first. That's the strategy, Mia replied. Undermine public confidence in the rollout. Make people question the safety. Create enough chaos that they beg for regulation. Which means begging Viridian, Jess said. The same people who started this war. Mia rubbed her temples. It's like trying to hold a rising tide with a paper wall. What if we don't hold it? Jess asked. What if we ride it instead? Mia looked up. You're talking about acceleration. Exactly. Release the full package. Not just schematics and specs. Open source every last line of code. Infrastructure. Modulators. Even the frequency sequencing protocols. That would make it impossible to control, Mia said. Jess smiled grimly. That's the point. Mia hesitated. She had spent years protecting her research. Not for ego, but for integrity. For safety. But she also knew the truth: the only thing more dangerous than a powerful technology was a powerful technology hoarded by the wrong hands. We'll do it, she said finally. But not just as a dump. We do it with guidance. Tutorials. Community nodes. Safety precautions. If we go open source, we do it like a movement. Jess cracked her knuckles. Then let's build the revolution's toolkit. They launched the Phoenix protocol 3 days later. It was more than a file archive, it was a playbook for energy independence. Complete with guides on how to safely construct microrelay systems using local materials. How to phase shift frequencies to avoid interference. How to measure energy latency and balance load between hybrid systems. And perhaps most importantly, how to make the technology regenerative, community-driven, and completely untraceable to a single source. The site hosting it crashed within an hour from traffic overload. Mirror links sprang up across the globe. Within the first week, the Phoenix protocol had been downloaded over 20 million times. In townships across South Africa, rooftop relays began beaming power to medical clinics. In the favelas outside Rio, DIY engineers were transmitting low-grade currents across homes once considered unreachable. Even in pockets of rural America, forgotten by aging grids, small towns were quietly detaching from their old energy suppliers, one light bulb at a time. But not everyone was celebrating. The global fossil lobby, already shaken, began pumping billions into media campaigns. Ads flooded streaming services, social feeds, and late-night TV: too fast, too fragile, unproven science, unseen dangers, power you can't see, can you trust it? Politicians bought in. Hearings were called. Who gave her the right, became the common refrain. Mia watched the circus unfold from a small safe house outside Flagstaff, Arizona, a temporary headquarters rigged with solar power, offline servers, and a backup relay link routed through 3 continents. She refused interviews. Let the story speak for itself. Let the light be louder than her name. But the noise still reached her. On day 14 of the Phoenix Protocol's release, a breach. Not technical, personal. Her father's house in Modesto was broken into. Not robbed. Not vandalized. Just entered. No fingerprints. No cameras triggered. Just a single printed photo left on the kitchen table. Mia's childhood picture, age 10, holding a science fair ribbon, and a single typed note, "This is your collateral." Mia was on a plane within 2 hours. Jess tried to stop her. "You walking into this doesn't make him safer." "He didn't ask for this," Mia said. "He doesn't even know what I've been doing. He deserves more than being used as leverage." Her father, George Carter, was a retired factory foreman, proud of his daughter, though he never quite understood the world she'd chosen. When Mia arrived, he was shaken but unharmed. "They didn't take anything," he said, staring at the photo. "Just left, that." He looked at her. "Am I in danger, honey?" "No," she said. "Not if I handle it." He studied her. "I always knew you'd shake the world. I just didn't think it would shake back so hard." She smiled, but there was a hollowness behind it. This war was no longer just code and tech. It was now flesh and blood. Back at the safe house, Mia called Musk directly. No assistance. No delays. Just a direct line. "They crossed a line," she told him. "It's not just about interference anymore. They're threatening civilians. Families. They're losing the war, and now they want to make it personal." Musk's voice was grim. "They always do when control slips. We need to go bigger," she said. "Not just open source. We need mass adoption. We need to make using this tech an act of public defiance." "You'll make more enemies," he warned. "Let them come," she said. "Because the more they come after us, the more the world will see what they're afraid of." That night, she initiated the second phase of Phoenix, Skyline. A decentralized global challenge. 1 month. 1 million nodes. No central funding. No corporate sponsorship. Just people. People building the system together, node by node, until it reached critical mass. The campaign lit social media on fire. #Skyline Challenge trended in over 50 countries. Schools took it up as STEM projects. Hacker collectives competed for the most efficient node. Local governments quietly backed community rollouts. Even in cities where legacy energy monopolies held control, rogue engineers began connecting buildings and parks with beacons disguised as sculpture or public art. In Istanbul, a cafe ran entirely on beam-transferred power from a node 2 blocks away. In Detroit, a collective of electricians and artists transformed an abandoned parking structure into a self-powered community hub. In Alaska, a high school science class lit up a frozen outpost using a hybrid node they built using Mia's protocols. Each success wasn't just power, it was proof. And proof, Mia knew, was louder than policy. But with every gain came a counterpunch. Viridian's proxies flooded the patent offices with emergency claims. Litigation bots spammed Mia's site with takedown requests. A coalition of energy giants announced an emergency stabilization initiative, thinly veiled language for an attempt to re-centralize the tech under corporate control. Mia countered with complete transparency. Every file. Every flaw. Every fix. It wasn't just her war now. It belonged to everyone willing to fight for a better future. That night, she sat under the desert sky with Jess, watching the stars blink against the dark. "Do you ever think we went too far?" Jess asked. "There's no going back now." Mia thought for a long time. "I used to think changing the world meant controlling the chaos. Making everything fit into a system. But now I think, maybe real change is when the chaos spreads the truth so far and wide, no one can own it anymore." Jess nodded. Collateral truth. Mia smiled faintly. Exactly. The world was different now. Not fixed. Not perfect. But more awake than it had ever been. The kind of awake that no ad campaign, no lawsuit, no blackout could ever fully put back to sleep. The fall of Colton Price. The pressure was mounting from every direction. After the global uproar sparked by the Phoenix Protocol and Skyline Challenge, one name kept surfacing behind the scenes of every scandal and sabotage attempt: Colton Price. Once a respected figure in clean energy circles, Price had evolved into the industry's most controversial titan, a man whose empire seemed inseparable from the fossil fuel establishment he claimed to reform. Mia had known him only by reputation until the leak of Viridian's internal messages exposed his direct role in attempts to discredit and control the wireless energy network. Now, with the truth out in the open, Price was no longer untouchable. The media vultures circled. Overnight, his carefully constructed public persona of progressive leadership began to unravel. Journalists dug through years of filings, uncovering shell companies, off-the-record lobbying efforts, and a tangled web of political donations designed to influence regulatory decisions. Price's phone lines went dark. Public appearances were cancelled without explanation. Meanwhile, Mia's own platform gained unprecedented traction as independent watchdog groups amplified the story of how Price had orchestrated sabotage and smear campaigns against decentralized energy innovators. Yet despite the mounting evidence and public outrage, Price held fast. Behind closed doors, his aides whispered of an impending counter-narrative that would clear his name and paint Mia as a reckless opportunist willing to jeopardize national security for fame. But what Mia didn't expect was the backlash from within his own ranks. At a secret shareholder meeting in a high-rise overlooking Wall Street, Price faced an uprising. The company's board members, many of whom had once supported his vision, now questioned the cost of his crusade against the decentralized network. "We are hemorrhaging billions in stock value," one director warned sharply. "The public's trust is eroding. Our investors want stability." Price slammed his fist on the mahogany table. "Stability at the expense of innovation is death. If we don't fight for control, someone else will, and we lose everything." A cold silence filled the room. Finally, a younger board member spoke up: "Maybe it's time to negotiate, not litigate." The tension was palpable, the fault line widening. Meanwhile, Mia watched the drama unfold from afar. Though she knew the stakes were higher than ever, she also sensed a turning tide. Price's empire was not as unshakable as it seemed. The truth was a double-edged sword, capable of both destroying and liberating. In an unexpected move, a coalition of international regulators announced a preliminary investigation into Viridian's business practices and Price's role in undermining energy innovation. The news sent shockwaves through the energy sector and Wall Street alike. Colton Price's response was swift and defiant, a leaked statement branding the investigation a politically motivated witch hunt designed to sabotage American leadership in energy technology. But cracks in his narrative were widening. Whistleblowers from within Viridian began coming forward, providing documentation that corroborated Mia's claims. Emails, internal memos, recordings of meetings, each piece chipped away at Price's defenses. Meanwhile, the public rallied behind Mia, who had become the unlikely face of a movement promising not just cleaner energy but a democratized future where power, both literal and metaphorical, belonged to the people. Yet with every victory came new challenges. Threats against Mia escalated. Her team faced hacking attempts, physical surveillance, and legal maneuvers aiming to silence her. Still, she pressed on, knowing that the fall of Colton Price was more than a personal battle, it was a symbolic moment in the fight for the future. On a brisk morning in New York, Price was summoned to testify before an emergency congressional committee. The session was broadcast live to millions. Under intense questioning, Price's calm facade cracked. He stumbled over details, denied obvious facts, and at one point, his voice rose to a defensive shout. Mia watched from her office, the weight of the moment heavy in her chest. This was the reckoning she had anticipated. But it was also a test of her own resolve. The committee concluded their session by recommending a full-scale federal investigation, citing serious concerns regarding the obstruction of technological progress and public safety. The news sent shockwaves through the industry. Investors began pulling back. Viridian's stock plunged. Price's allies distanced themselves. The once untouchable titan was facing a fall that seemed inevitable. Yet in the midst of it all, Mia reached out. She extended an olive branch to any Viridian employees willing to join the movement toward open-source innovation, emphasizing collaboration over conflict. Her message was clear: the future belonged to those willing to build it together. Slowly, fractures within Viridian grew wider. Key engineers and project leaders resigned, many joining Mia's initiative, bringing valuable expertise and insider knowledge. The shift was palpable. By the end of the month, Price's hold on the company had weakened dramatically. Facing mounting pressure from the board and legal inquiries, he announced his resignation. The statement was terse, promising a new chapter for Viridian but refusing to concede any wrongdoing. Mia knew the fight wasn't over. The systems Price helped build would not vanish overnight. But his fall marked a pivotal victory, a symbolic shift from closed, centralized control to an era of transparency and shared innovation. The world was watching. And for the first time in a long time, the future looked a little brighter. In the quiet that followed, Mia reflected on how far the journey had come, from a lone inventor fighting shadowy corporate forces to a global catalyst for change. She wasn't naive. More battles lay ahead. But with every light that flickered on in homes powered by the decentralized network, she was reminded that progress was unstoppable when it belonged to the many, not the few. Echoes of resistance. The fall of Colton Price reverberated through the corridors of power and industry like a seismic shift, yet the battle for the future of energy was far from over. For every victory Mia Carter secured, a new challenge surfaced from unexpected places, and the shadows of resistance grew louder. Even as Price's empire crumbled, remnants of his influence fought desperately to maintain control, twisting the narrative to paint Mia's revolution as reckless and dangerous. The media, still tethered to the old money's purse strings, began airing documentaries questioning the safety of decentralized energy, raising alarms about unregulated power grids and potential security risks. While some voices in the press stood firmly with Mia, others sowed doubt, weaving a complicated web of fear and uncertainty among the public. But it wasn't just media spin. On the ground, a growing network of grassroots activists and technologists faced violent pushback. In cities where Phoenix Protocol nodes had blossomed into vibrant community hubs, coordinated raids dismantled critical infrastructure. Activists were detained, their digital footprints erased or weaponized against them. It was a dark echo of the very control Mia had spent years fighting to dismantle. Yet the resistance was not one-sided. Inspired by Mia's example and fueled by a growing sense of urgency, an international coalition began forming. Scientists, engineers, hackers, and everyday citizens united by a common vision. The coalition called themselves ECHO, a nod to the reverberations of change that could no longer be silenced. ECHO's operations were decentralized, utilizing encrypted communication channels and shadow networks to coordinate efforts across continents. Their mission was clear: defend the decentralized energy movement, amplify its reach, and ensure that no threat, legal, physical, or digital, could extinguish the flame that had been lit. Mia found herself at the heart of this vast web, not as a solitary leader, but as a crucial node in a living, breathing network of resilience. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Seattle skyline, Mia received an encrypted message. The sender was unknown, but the contents were unmistakable: detailed blueprints for a new type of relay node, capable of self-repair and dynamic frequency adaptation. It was a breakthrough that could dramatically increase the stability and reach of the wireless energy grid. The note was simple but powerful: for the movement. For the future. She shared the files with Jess, who immediately began running simulations. "This could change everything," Jess said, eyes wide with excitement. "If we can deploy these new nodes, the network will be almost impossible to shut down." But with every advance came new risks. The same night, Mia's team detected a coordinated cyber attack aimed at crippling the global control servers that coordinated the Skyline Challenge nodes. The attack was sophisticated, leveraging AI-driven malware designed to mimic legitimate signals and disrupt synchronization across thousands of nodes. It was the digital front of the war, a battle fought in pulses and packets instead of bullets. Mia and Jess spent long hours orchestrating a defense, deploying countermeasures, and rerouting power through unaffected channels. The stress was immense, but their determination was unwavering. They were protecting more than technology, they were safeguarding hope itself. The next morning, as news outlets buzzed with reports of mysterious outages in several metropolitan areas, Mia addressed the Echo Coalition in a secure broadcast. Her voice was steady, filled with resolve. They want to scare us. To fracture our network and our spirit. But every outage is a reminder that our system is real, that it's powerful, and that they fear what we represent. We will rebuild faster. We will adapt stronger. This is not just a fight for energy. It's a fight for freedom. The rallying cry spread quickly, igniting renewed passion among supporters worldwide. Community workshops multiplied, teaching new volunteers how to build, maintain, and defend nodes. Hackathons produced innovative security protocols. Local governments, witnessing the grassroots momentum and the public's growing trust, began easing restrictions and even providing resources to support decentralized energy initiatives. Yet amidst the surge of optimism, Mia never lost sight of the stakes. The forces arrayed against them were vast and relentless. In Washington, powerful lobbyists pushed for sweeping legislation aimed at criminalizing unauthorized energy transmission, a thinly veiled attempt to strangle the movement legally. Some politicians, once skeptical, now faced intense pressure from constituents demanding access to clean, independent power, creating a volatile political landscape. During a particularly tense meeting with a sympathetic senator, Mia felt the heavy weight of compromise. The senator warned, if we push too hard, the backlash could undo everything. You need allies in Congress, people who can protect your work from being crushed in committee. Mia nodded, understanding the delicate balance. We want to build bridges, not burn them. But we won't sacrifice the core of what makes this movement powerful, the freedom to innovate and connect without gatekeepers. As the political tug-of-war continued, Echo's operations evolved. They developed decentralized energy cooperatives, community-owned and governed grids that operated independently but linked together in a resilient mesh. These cooperatives became beacons of empowerment, demonstrating the practical benefits of the technology beyond theoretical promise. Stories emerged of neighborhoods reclaiming control from monopolistic utilities, reducing costs, and dramatically improving reliability. In a small town in Vermont, a former factory was converted into a cooperative hub powering homes, schools, and businesses. The town's mayor, once skeptical, now spoke openly about the energy renaissance unfolding before their eyes. But the echoes of resistance were never far. Sabotage attempts continued, ranging from subtle interference to violent vandalism. In one harrowing incident, a cooperative node was set ablaze, threatening to undo months of progress. The community responded not with fear, but with solidarity, rallying to rebuild and fortify their network. For Mia, the incident was a stark reminder of the cost of change. She carried the weight of every setback, every threat, every loss. Yet she also carried the stories of triumph, of children studying under lights powered by the network, of clinics running life-saving equipment in remote regions, of activists standing firm against intimidation. Each story was a testament to resilience. One night, exhausted but resolute, Mia met with Jess in the quiet of their command center. "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it?" Jess asked softly. "Sometimes," Mia admitted. "But then I think about all the people who don't have to live in darkness because of this. And I know we can't stop." Jess smiled. Echo isn't just a name. It's what we do, send out a wave of hope that comes back stronger every time. Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere, a node flickered to life, sending invisible currents of power through the night. The resistance was loud, fierce, and unyielding, but so was the movement Mia had helped ignite. And as the echoes of change spread across the globe, one truth became clear: the future was no longer a distant dream. It was happening now, in the hearts and hands of those brave enough to believe. Fractures in the network. As the decentralized energy movement surged forward with unprecedented momentum, cracks began to appear, not from external attacks or sabotage, but from within. The ideals that had united thousands of innovators, activists, and everyday citizens were now colliding with the complexities of scale, governance, and human nature. Mia Carter, who had once stood as a beacon of unifying vision, found herself navigating the treacherous waters of ideological divides and emerging conflicts that threatened to fragment everything they had built. The Echo Coalition, a sprawling network of decentralized energy hubs and cooperatives, was an unprecedented experiment in collective action. But coordinating thousands of independent nodes, each governed by their local communities or groups, was proving to be an immense challenge. Some hubs prioritized open access above all else, welcoming anyone willing to connect, believing that energy was a universal right. Others, wary of potential abuses and security risks, pushed for stricter controls and vetting processes. The tension was palpable during one virtual summit, where heated debates erupted over the future direction of the network. Voices clamored for more central oversight to prevent misuse and ensure safety. Others rejected any form of hierarchy as antithetical to the movement's spirit. Mia moderated as best she could, emphasizing common goals and the importance of flexibility. Yet, beneath the surface, factions were forming. A growing concern was the risk of infiltration by those who sought to exploit the system, criminal enterprises, hackers, or even hostile governments aiming to destabilize critical infrastructure. Stories surfaced of unauthorized energy siphoning, data breaches, and malicious nodes designed to disrupt network harmony. These fractures challenged the movement's foundational trust and forced difficult questions about governance and security. Mia found herself caught between her commitment to decentralization and the pressing need for safeguards. During a tense meeting with key Echo leaders, she proposed a novel solution, a federated model that allowed communities to maintain autonomy while agreeing to shared standards and protocols for security and interoperability. The idea was met with cautious optimism but also skepticism. Some worried it was a slippery slope toward centralization, while others saw it as a necessary compromise to survive. Meanwhile, in the real world, the practical challenges of maintaining the network became glaringly apparent. As the number of nodes grew exponentially, technical issues multiplied. Older hardware began to fail, software incompatibilities created glitches, and the wireless energy transmissions occasionally interfered with other critical signals, raising alarms among aviation and emergency services. Regulatory bodies, already wary from previous battles, escalated pressure. New rules were proposed to limit frequencies and transmission power, effectively threatening to choke the network. Mia and her technical team scrambled to adapt, developing innovative fixes like adaptive frequency hopping and redundant relay nodes to ensure stability. But the effort strained resources and stretched their capacities thin. Adding to the internal strife was a growing rift between Mia and some of her closest allies. Jess, who had been instrumental in developing the wireless technology, grew increasingly concerned about the movement's direction. "We started this to empower people, to give them freedom," Jess said one evening during a rare private conversation. "But now, with all these factions and security measures, it feels like we're building a new kind of gatekeeper. I worry we're losing sight of why we began." Mia understood Jess's fears but felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. "We have to be realistic," she replied. "If we don't adapt, the movement won't survive. Freedom isn't just about openness, it's about trust and safety, too." The disagreement was emblematic of broader debates tearing through the coalition. As the ideological fractures deepened, so too did operational challenges. Some communities began breaking away entirely, establishing independent networks that refused to coordinate with Echo. Others attempted to merge, forming regional alliances with their own governance models. This patchwork quilt of alliances and rivalries made the overall movement more vulnerable and harder to sustain. Outside the network, the powers that had once fought openly against Mia now shifted tactics. Instead of blunt force, they infiltrated, funding dissenting groups, spreading misinformation, and exploiting fractures to weaken unity. The media amplified these divisions, portraying the decentralized movement as chaotic and untrustworthy. Public confidence wavered. In one of the most dramatic moments of the year, a major cooperative in California declared its independence from ECO, citing excessive control and compromised principles. The split sent shockwaves through the community, with supporters polarized between those who championed purity of decentralization and those who advocated pragmatic unity. Mia felt the sting of betrayal but knew the battle for the future was never simple. The fractures within the network mirrored the fractures in society itself, a world grappling with change, uncertainty, and competing visions of progress. To rebuild trust, Mia embarked on a listening tour, visiting cooperatives across the country and engaging directly with diverse communities. She listened to their hopes, frustrations, and fears. She saw the passion that had sparked the movement and the fatigue born of relentless struggle. She realized that the path forward required humility and adaptability. At a gathering in Chicago, surrounded by activists, engineers, and residents powered by the network, Mia delivered an impassioned speech. "We started this because we believed in a future where energy belongs to everyone, not just the privileged few. But belief alone isn't enough. We must build structures that reflect our values, structures that are inclusive, resilient, and accountable. Our strength lies not in uniformity, but in diversity and respect." The message resonated. Slowly, discussions turned from division to dialogue. Pilot programs launched to test the federated governance model, blending local autonomy with shared principles. Technological innovations focused on interoperability and security without sacrificing openness. Partnerships with universities and nonprofits helped develop education programs, fostering new generations of energy activists and technicians. Yet, even as progress was made, Mia remained vigilant. She knew the fractures were not just technical or political, they were human. Change was messy, often painful, and required constant negotiation of competing interests. In quiet moments, she reflected on the journey from the first spark of the Phoenix Protocol to this complex, sprawling movement. The dream of a clean, free energy future was alive, but it demanded patience, resilience, and an unyielding commitment to principles. As the network stabilized and evolved, the world watched closely. The movement was no longer just about energy, it was a microcosm of the broader struggle for control, freedom, and identity in an interconnected age. And through it all, Mia Carter stood firm, a leader not of perfection, but of persistence, guiding a fractured network toward a future still unwritten. Crossroads of power. The fractures within the decentralized network had begun to mend, but the journey forward now confronted a new and more formidable challenge, the crossroads where technology, politics, and power converged with unprecedented intensity. Mia Carter found herself navigating a terrain where every decision could ripple across the world's energy landscape, and where alliances were fragile and often temporary. The political arena had become a battlefield as critical as any technological front. Governments, once wary or outright hostile, now realized the magnitude of what Mia and ECO represented. Some saw an opportunity to harness decentralized energy for national resilience and climate goals. Others feared loss of control, economic disruption, and the empowerment of citizens beyond traditional oversight. Mia's efforts to engage lawmakers had evolved from cautious conversations to high-stakes negotiations. One key meeting was with Senator Evelyn Brooks, a powerful figure chairing a congressional energy committee. Evelyn was pragmatic and fiercely intelligent, embodying the contradictions of the moment, a politician deeply committed to environmental reform but wary of rapid upheaval that might destabilize established institutions. In their first face-to-face meeting, Evelyn laid out her concerns plainly. "Your movement has undeniable potential, Mia. But with potential comes responsibility. We can't afford to let energy systems become fragmented to the point where they threaten grid reliability or national security." Mia responded with equal candor. "That's why we're developing federated governance and robust security protocols. But the old centralized models have failed us for decades. It's time to empower communities, to innovate from the ground up." Their dialogue was tense but constructive, a microcosm of the broader struggle playing out in legislatures across the country. Meanwhile, powerful utility companies and fossil fuel interests intensified lobbying efforts. Behind closed doors, influential executives pressed for regulations that would limit or delay decentralized projects. They framed the movement as risky, unproven, and potentially disruptive to the economy. In public, they leaned into narratives of reliability and safety, aiming to sow doubt among consumers and policymakers. This clash was not limited to Washington. On the global stage, international organizations debated standards and protocols for energy networks, with various countries vying to influence rules that could either accelerate or stifle decentralized innovation. Mia found herself attending virtual summits with diplomats, scientists, and industry leaders, advocating for open standards and equitable access. Yet, the most critical crossroads lay within the movement itself. ECO's federated model was still fragile, and new tensions emerged around resource allocation and strategic priorities. Some factions prioritized rapid expansion into underserved regions, eager to prove the technology's social impact. Others pushed for deepening technological sophistication, investing heavily in AI-driven optimization and quantum communication research. Balancing these priorities required difficult choices and trade-offs. In one memorable ECO Council meeting, voices rose in debate over funding distribution. "We can't ignore the tech breakthroughs, they will future-proof the network," argued Dr. Lin, a leading researcher. "But if we don't reach the communities in need now, what's the point?" countered Amara, a community organizer from Detroit. Mia listened carefully, recognizing that this tension mirrored the broader challenge of balancing idealism with pragmatism. To build bridges, she proposed a tiered strategy. Simultaneously advancing cutting-edge research while dedicating significant resources to deployment and education in marginalized areas. The proposal was imperfect, but it sparked a renewed commitment to collaboration. At the same time, internal security threats persisted. Sophisticated cyber attacks attempted to hijack nodes for ransom or sabotage, forcing constant vigilance. ECO's security teams expanded, collaborating with white-hat hackers and global agencies to fortify defenses. Yet these challenges only reinforced the movement's resilience and adaptability. Outside the technical and political spheres, public sentiment was evolving. Early skepticism gave way to curiosity, then enthusiasm, as communities experienced tangible benefits, reduced energy bills, fewer outages, and increased local control. Mia frequently traveled to meet with citizens, hearing firsthand the stories of transformation. In rural Kansas, a farming cooperative described how wireless energy nodes powered irrigation systems during a severe drought, sustaining crops when traditional infrastructure failed. In Baltimore, a community center powered by Phoenix Protocol technology became a hub for education and health services, emblematic of the movement's promise. These stories fueled Mia's determination but also reminded her of the stakes. The crossroads they faced was not only about technology or policy but about the kind of world they chose to build. The symbolism was not lost on her. One afternoon, standing on a hill overlooking a sprawling solar array connected by ECO's network, Mia reflected on the journey. From a lone inventor tinkering in her garage to a global movement reshaping energy and society, the path had been anything but linear. The decisions made now would shape the future for generations. That evening, Mia convened a special strategy session with ECO's core leadership. The agenda was clear: define a roadmap that could navigate the complex interplay of innovation, regulation, and social impact. They discussed scenarios ranging from accelerated adoption and global cooperation to backlash and fragmentation. They debated ethical considerations, how to ensure equity, prevent exploitation, and safeguard privacy. The conversation was exhaustive and intense. Ultimately, they agreed on a set of guiding principles emphasizing transparency, inclusivity, adaptability, and a commitment to serve the greater good. Mia also recognized the need for new alliances. She reached out to unexpected partners, technology companies traditionally seen as competitors, indigenous leaders advocating for environmental justice, and youth activists demanding bold climate action. These alliances expanded the movement's reach and enriched its vision. One breakthrough came when a major tech firm announced collaboration on integrating decentralized energy nodes with smart city infrastructure, promising to accelerate adoption and enhance data security. The media hailed it as a landmark partnership, signaling a shift in mainstream acceptance. Yet, the crossroads remained precarious. The political landscape shifted with elections bringing new leaders who were either champions or critics of decentralized energy. Mia and her team had to continuously adapt messaging and strategy, balancing advocacy with diplomacy. Throughout this period, Mia's personal journey paralleled the movement's challenges. The relentless pace, public scrutiny, and high stakes tested her resilience. Moments of doubt crept in, but so did moments of profound connection and purpose. In a quiet moment with Jess, Mia confessed, "Sometimes I wonder if we're really changing the world, or just caught in a cycle of power and resistance." Jess smiled gently. "Change is messy. But look around, you're at the center of something that's bigger than any of us. The crossroads is just part of the journey." As the chapter closed, Mia stood on the precipice of a new era. The crossroads of power demanded vision, courage, and compromise. The future was uncertain, but the movement she helped forge was stronger, more diverse, and more determined than ever. And in that moment, the choice was clear: to face the crossroads head-on and shape a future where energy, and the power it represented, belonged to everyone. The catalyst effect change often arrives not as a thunderclap but as a spark, small, almost imperceptible, until it ignites a blaze that reshapes everything. For Mia Carter and the decentralized energy movement, that spark came unexpectedly, setting off a chain reaction that would accelerate their mission beyond anything they had imagined. It began with a modest pilot project in Phoenix, Arizona, a city whose vast urban sprawl had long struggled with aging infrastructure and frequent blackouts. ECHO's network had been slowly expanding here, supported by a coalition of local activists, engineers, and community leaders. But what happened next transformed the city into a symbol of possibility and hope. And sent ripples around the world. The catalyst was a sudden, severe heatwave that pushed Phoenix's electrical grid to the brink. Temperatures soared above 110 degrees Fahrenheit for days, triggering rolling blackouts that left thousands sweltering in darkness. Hospitals scrambled to maintain critical systems, while vulnerable populations faced life-threatening conditions. It was a crisis that exposed the fragility of centralized energy systems and the urgent need for alternatives. Yet, amid the chaos, the Phoenix Protocol network stood firm. Decentralized nodes across the city automatically rerouted power, balancing loads and keeping essential services online. Community hubs powered by the network became refuges for those without electricity at home. Word spread quickly. News crews flocked to the city, capturing scenes of resilience powered by invisible currents flowing through the air. Mia, alerted by her team, traveled to Phoenix to witness the impact firsthand. Walking through neighborhoods lit by wireless energy, she saw faces marked by exhaustion but glowing with newfound hope. At a local community center, she met Luis, a retired schoolteacher who had volunteered to maintain a node. "This system saved lives," Luis said simply. "It showed us what's possible when people come together." The story of Phoenix became a turning point, a vivid demonstration of decentralized energy's potential to withstand crisis when traditional systems failed. It sparked a wave of interest and investment, drawing new supporters and accelerating adoption. Governments that had been hesitant began reconsidering regulations, while philanthropic organizations funneled resources into expanding similar networks nationwide. For Mia, the catalyst effect was a validation of years of struggle and sacrifice. But it also brought new challenges. With increased visibility came increased scrutiny. Powerful interests that had once tried to suppress the movement now sought to co-opt it, offering funding and partnerships, but often with strings attached. Navigating these overtures required vigilance and discernment. During a tense negotiation with a multinational energy conglomerate, Mia encountered the delicate dance of cooperation and caution. The company proposed integrating Echo's technology into their grid in exchange for significant financial support. The offer was tempting, promising rapid scale and resources. Yet Mia sensed a trap: potential loss of autonomy and dilution of principles. "We appreciate the offer," Mia told their executives, "but our mission isn't just about technology or profit. It's about empowering people, preserving freedom, and building something fundamentally different. That means we have to be careful about who we partner with." The company withdrew the offer, and the incident sent a clear message to the movement: staying true to core values was both a strength and a vulnerability. Meanwhile, the catalyst effect sparked innovation at a breathtaking pace. Universities, startups, and independent researchers raced to develop complementary technologies, energy storage solutions, AI-driven optimization tools, and advanced materials for node construction. Collaboration flourished across disciplines and borders. Mia and Jess co-hosted a global summit where thousands of innovators shared breakthroughs and challenges. The energy was electric, literal and metaphorical. In the midst of this explosion of progress, Mia grappled with the human dimension of change. The rapid growth stretched the movement's social fabric. Training programs struggled to keep pace with demand, and some communities felt left behind. Inequality, a persistent shadow, threatened to re-emerge in new forms. To address this, Echo launched an initiative focused on inclusive education and resource distribution, prioritizing marginalized and underserved populations. The goal was to ensure the catalyst effect reached everyone, not just the privileged few. One particularly moving story came from a Native American reservation in New Mexico. The community had long suffered from unreliable electricity and environmental degradation from nearby mining. Through Echo's outreach and support, they installed a network of wireless nodes powered by solar arrays, restoring power to homes, schools, and health clinics. Tribal elders spoke of healing, not just of the land, but of broken trust and autonomy. These stories fueled Mia's conviction that the catalyst effect was more than technological, it was deeply personal and cultural. Yet, with every breakthrough came new battles. Political opposition intensified in some regions, with lawmakers introducing legislation to restrict or tax decentralized energy systems. Misinformation campaigns spread online, stoking fear and confusion among the public. Echo's communications teams worked tirelessly to counter falsehoods and build trust through transparency and engagement. The pressure took a toll. Mia found herself increasingly in the public eye, balancing advocacy with strategic leadership. The relentless pace and scrutiny wore on her, yet she remained steadfast. During a rare quiet moment, Jess found her staring out a window overlooking the city skyline lit by Echo's network. "How do you keep going?" Jess asked gently. Mia smiled wearily. "Because I've seen what's possible. Because people believe. Because the future depends on us." As the catalyst effect spread, the decentralized energy movement reached new heights, and faced new horizons. It was no longer an underground revolution but a rising force shaping policy, markets, and culture. The path ahead was filled with promise and peril. The question was no longer if they could change the world, but how they would navigate the power and responsibility that came with that change. In the end, Mia understood, the catalyst effect was a test, not just of technology, but of humanity's capacity to dream, adapt, and unite. And as the invisible currents of energy flowed stronger than ever, so too did the currents of hope. Shadows of doubt. The glow of the catalyst effect illuminated possibilities once thought unreachable, but it also cast long shadows, doubts that crept into the minds of even the most steadfast supporters. For Mia Carter, the triumphant surge of decentralized energy came with an undercurrent of unease. The rapid growth, while inspiring, was exposing vulnerabilities that threatened to unravel hard-won gains. The first shadows emerged subtly, as questions whispered in the halls of Echo's leadership and echoed across digital forums. Could the movement sustain its ideals at scale? Was the federated model resilient enough to withstand internal discord and external attack? Did the technology, brilliant though it was, mask unforeseen consequences? These doubts weren't simply academic. They became tangible in incidents that challenged the movement's cohesion and credibility. A cluster of nodes in the Pacific Northwest malfunctioned, causing localized blackouts and sparking heated debates about safety and oversight. Investigations revealed a sophisticated cyber intrusion exploiting a previously unknown vulnerability in the wireless protocols. The breach was contained quickly, but the incident rattled public confidence and intensified scrutiny from regulators and skeptics alike. MIA convened emergency meetings with security teams and community leaders, emphasizing transparency and swift action. "We must learn from this," she told her team. "Security is not a destination but a journey, and every setback is a chance to grow stronger." Yet, the breach fueled narratives among opponents that the decentralized model was inherently flawed, too chaotic, too vulnerable. Media outlets splashed headlines warning of energy chaos and digital danger, shifting the conversation from possibility to peril. Within Echo, the shadows deepened as ideological fractures re-emerged. Some members advocated for tighter centralized control to prevent future breaches, while others warned that such moves would betray the movement's founding principles. The debates became more acrimonious, threatening to splinter alliances that had only recently begun to heal. At the heart of the struggle was a personal reckoning for Mia. She wrestled with the weight of responsibility, not only for the technology and the movement but for the people whose lives it touched. In sleepless nights, doubts gnawed at her resolve. Had she underestimated the complexities of scaling radical change? Was her vision too idealistic in a world governed by power and compromise? Adding to her inner turmoil were whispers of dissent within her closest circle. Jess, once a steadfast partner, voiced growing reservations. "We're moving so fast, Mia. Sometimes I wonder if we're losing sight of the human element, the communities we pledged to empower." Mia listened, recognizing the truth in the concern but fearful of losing momentum. The tension culminated in a private confrontation that laid bare their differences. "We need to slow down, to rebuild trust from the ground up," Jess urged. "Otherwise, we risk alienating the very people we want to help. And let the whole movement stall." Mia countered. "We don't have that luxury." The conversation ended unresolved, a fracture both painful and necessary. Beyond internal struggles, external pressures mounted. Political winds shifted as election cycles brought new leadership less sympathetic to decentralized energy. Lobbying efforts by entrenched utilities intensified, framing the movement as a threat to economic stability and national security. Regulatory proposals aimed at imposing burdensome requirements threatened to stall progress. In this fraught environment, ECHO's communications team worked overtime to maintain public trust and clarify misconceptions. Mia became a frequent presence in interviews, town halls, and conferences, striving to balance hope with realism. The movement's social media channels became battlegrounds, with supporters and detractors clashing in heated exchanges. To counter misinformation, ECHO launched educational campaigns, emphasizing transparency, community stories, and technical explanations. But the shadows of doubt lingered, seeping into the collective consciousness. At the same time, new ethical dilemmas emerged. Data privacy became a flashpoint as the network's AI-driven optimization tools collected vast amounts of information. Advocates for open data clashed with privacy champions demanding strict protections. Mia found herself mediating between technologists eager to innovate and communities fearful of surveillance. The resolution was a cautious framework balancing data utility with consent and security, but the debates underscored the complexity of building trust in a digital age. In one particularly difficult episode, a whistleblower within ECHO revealed internal disagreements over a potential deal with a corporate partner accused of environmental violations. The revelation sparked outrage among grassroots supporters and forced the leadership to re-evaluate the partnership. Mia publicly reaffirmed ECHO's commitment to ethical standards, but the incident left scars. As the movement grappled with these shadows, Mia sought solace and clarity in unexpected places. She reconnected with her family, long strained by the demands of her work. Conversations with her younger sister, who pursued community activism, reminded her of the movement's roots in real people's lives and struggles. Quiet moments alone, walking through parks powered by Echo's network or watching children play under streetlights fueled by wireless energy, rekindled her sense of purpose. One turning point came during a visit to a rural Appalachian town struggling with poverty and environmental degradation. The community had adopted Echo's technology but faced challenges in maintenance and education. Meeting with local leaders, Mia listened to stories of resilience and frustration. "We want the future, but we need help getting there," said a school principal. The encounter crystallized the shadows into a clear call to action. Technology alone was not enough. True empowerment required sustained support, partnership, and humility. Inspired, Mia launched a new initiative focused on community-led training, resource sharing, and capacity building. The goal was to bridge gaps and nurture local leadership, recognizing that decentralization must be matched by decentralized stewardship. The shadows of doubt had not vanished but transformed into catalysts for deeper reflection and renewal. Mia understood that doubt was an intrinsic part of any transformative journey, a force that, when acknowledged and engaged, could strengthen rather than weaken. The decentralized energy movement stood at a crossroads once more, challenged by complexity, human frailty, and external resistance. Yet it also carried the promise of resilience born from honesty and adaptation. In the quiet hours before dawn, Mia wrote in her journal, "Doubt is not failure. It is the shadow cast by light. To move forward, we must embrace both." And with that acceptance, she stepped into the uncertain but hopeful future ahead. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?